Hi everyone. This is going to be a series of astrological just podcasts on the subject of self-esteem in astrology. And this is going to be part one of, I'm not sure how many parts it'll go for, maybe 3 or 4, but I've chosen a few key aspects to look at. And for those who know their planetary astrology charts may find this beneficial. But one of the first aspect I want to talk about is the Saturn-Venus. And Saturn I've talked about in a few other podcasts, primarily just because of the Saturn-Pluto conjunction that's been in effect of this year. But the Saturn-Venus one is a very, very interesting one because I find it to be, because Saturn rules time, so we kind of learn to grow to love ourselves over time. And how I'm going to approach this, I'm going to talk about shadow aspects as well as potentials, because whatever's difficult, whatever aspects we have in astrology, people read up on a lot of things and they may think, oh, geez, that's negative or that's not so good. But it's just not the case at all. I mean, particularly with the planet Saturn, because when Saturn aspects or contacts other aspects, that's an area in the chart we really need to pay attention to, but it's also an aspect that we will grow into over time because Saturn governs time. So it's a very, very important thing to consider. Nothing is really negative in a chart, and it's not deterministic either. We all have fate, we all have, control of our destinies. But this Saturn-Venus aspect is quite difficult because Venus is about values and how we value ourselves. And particularly if Saturn contacts this, it gives us a sense of a vulnerability around this. And we can look at it, one of this aspect is we can have a low sense of self-worth and self-esteem. The potential here is to contain a strong sense of self-worth and a sense of containment of one's values. So this is what we can achieve over a period of time with this aspect. This aspect can lead to shyness and amongst many other things, but I'm going to go through that in a minute. But the thing is to consider is how can we use, or an individual with this aspect, use the Saturn as a container for their Venus rather than a barrier. So this is what it all comes down to when it comes down to this aspect, because there's shadow sides of it and there's potential sides. And pretty much the shadow side of this would be, we can look at it like, because Venus rules relationships, relating with others, so we can have a lack of relationship. We can hold back from relationships. We can also hold back of love because Venus rules loves. We can have a limiting projection about love. We may have felt we've received limited love from others. We can lack our own confidence in love. We may have very few loving relationships in life. We may receive very few compliments from people. We potential not to find beauty in the self. And as Venus rules the creative side, the arts, we may lack confidence in our own creative abilities. And as Venus rules beauty as well, so we can also, because Saturn has a serious side to it, I mean, Saturn's a very serious planet, so sometimes we can, with these two contacts together, we can take beauty very seriously. We can have fear of relationships, fear of creativity. We may feel we lack money. We might have tight finances. There can also be slow financial growth because, like I said before, Saturn over time, Venus rules money. Over time, our finances can build slowly. We may feel we lack charisma or maybe feel inhibited around sensual expression. showing how we feel, showing how we love. We may feel awkward about it. We may be reserved or shy in social settings. A little bit of inflexibility in relationships, inability to give in to pleasure, allow ourselves to, celebrate and enjoy life can be one of the really difficult things of this aspect. Feeling that relationships are a burden or a lot of work, or sometimes, as like I said, Saturn puts in time in relationships, we feel like we need to put in some really hard yakka to sustain our relationships. We can have a depressed outlook on relationships. We can feel depressed about the way we look or our own powers of attraction. We can feel we're not attractive, good looking, creative or sociable enough. We can lack confidence, like I said, in social abilities, and feeling that, we never have enough money. It's one of the really key ones of this aspect, actually, because of the value of self. Venus rules how we value ourselves. And with Saturn there, we need to probably just put in time to put in that extra energy to work out how we can actually value ourselves as a person. And most likely with all Saturn aspects, we grow into over time, and we feel like we come into ourselves around midlife, really, because Saturn rules the earth. It takes a few kind of life cycles to, feel comfortable with this, because on the flip side of this, when we talk about the potentials of this aspect, it is all about how we can use this aspect. Usually in our earlier years, we're more vulnerable to these things because we're not emotionally mature. We haven't developed a mental body enough. We're not well read. We don't know how to handle these kind of things, particularly when it comes to emotion, how to process emotion, how to actually really acknowledge the shadow of the psyche is not really taught. So the potential of this Saturn-Venus, if we really allow ourselves to experience it, because Saturn rules autonomy. So when we become more autonomous, more authentic in terms of our own selfhood or being, then we can, one of the really key aspects of a Saturn-Venus is the ability to create enduring relationships that stand the test of time. In another way, Venus rules seduction in a way, so it can be disciplined in the art of seduction. We can age gracefully, because Saturn rules aging as well. We can have good timing. We can take our own creativity process very seriously. We can be very good with money, understanding how to handle money, taking the time to look into investing or have our own kind of way over time of producing our own financial stability. It rules timeless arts and crafts, this aspect. We can be very serious in the way we relate. We can find beauty in hard circumstance, take love really seriously. The Saturn-Venus type too can really take rejection very, very harsh. They can find it hard. We can also feel attracted to people who are older than ourselves. There's always a little bit of a gap between the years of people. And we can find pleasure. One of the potentials is we can find pleasure that requires, with an activity that requires discipline, because that's what Saturn's all about. So it can be a creative process that requires discipline, like learning an instrument over time, music, a discipline that we have to put in a lot of energy and time to. It has a knack for attracting business people because, Saturn is ruled by Capricorn, so it rules the earth plane. It can be very good for attracting business people, business partners. Another good indication of this aspect is the Saturn-Venus type can have a realistic outlook on relationships because, like I said in other podcasts, Saturn is the reality principle. You can be attracted to serious people. Saturn-Venus types will only really be interested in having serious relationships. They're not players. Becoming more sociable with age is another one. Feeling better about the way we look as we get older. Feeling more comfortable in our own skin as we get older. So we grow into ourselves. Handling responsibility beautifully, and like I said, master of the arts. These are the real potentials for this relationship. So one of the key things about this, because self-esteem is primarily important, so cultivating self-esteem for a Saturn-Venus type is going to be developed over time. And it's only really going to be developed when you put in good, hard, honest work into it, because this is what this aspect is really demands. And like I said, when we grow into Saturn, we become it becomes, wherever that planet is in our chart, is that potential to master. It's a very vulnerable point, and particularly when aspecting Venus, then we have work cut out for ourselves to learn how to really value ourselves. And when we do this, honestly, autonomously, we can have a real love of self. And that's where the true expression of self-esteem comes from.